I did a little survey. I asked people, what's it like for them being single and what are they up against, basically. And what I got was pretty interesting. They fell into three basic categories. One that I heard was a fear of rejection, right? Another one I heard was a fear of rejecting somebody, hurting somebody's feelings. If you frame it as rejection, that just sounds like a negative term. And I love what you said, that it's not about rejecting somebody. It's about, it's not quite the right fit to go forward. People make jokes in the single dating world as going out on a onesie or a twosie date, meaning one date and you realize, it's not quite right. 2 days, you try it a second time and then you realize it's not quite right. But the truth of it is, I have been on these sorts of dates and these people wind up being my friends. One of the things that strikes me is how often I have heard, and probably you have as well, that you have to love yourself first. How can you love others or someone else until you love yourself? And I've found that has been so misconstrued in the world that I really started to see as my understanding of the principles grew. It's not about personal love. It's nothing about personal love. For me, loving myself is loving the essence of who I am, which is who all of you are as well. That saying that pops up from time to time about the fact that we are spiritual beings living a human life. That's what I'm reminded of, that when you take away the negative judgments, when you take away all the thinking about comparing yourself to others or comparing somebody else to others, all that personal thinking that we do, if you strip all of that away, you have pure love. That's what's there always. It's always, and you see that because in your own life, that's what I love about the principles, that we learn from our own experience. So people like Mark and myself and others on the call who are teaching the principles, we are all pointing people in a direction. The direction is inside each one of us, underneath all the thinking that we do, the negative thinking. And the way I experience it is how quickly I'll get into a feeling of love. I could drive up to my brother's house with a bunch of thought on my mind that has me in not a great mood. And the minute my two nieces open the door, I am just totally in love. They're 12 and 13. They're just love balls. And whatever thinking was on my mind, bam, it's gone. So to me, that's, and that just happens over and over again in life all the time. Whenever we drop or let go of negative thinking, we're left with a purity. Some people call it pure consciousness. I like calling it pure love. It's not loving another person or loving our personal selves. It's about loving the essence behind all of us. How can you not be in love with this? It's just so awesome, awe-inspiring that we have this capacity to experience creation. And why do we have that? We have that because of the principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. That is in operation within every human all the time, whether they know it or not. It was always inside of me before I knew it. And that's the case for everybody. So actually, getting back to that little poll that I took. So what I heard was fear of rejection, fear of hurting somebody's feelings, and fear of having to give up a lifestyle that you've created that you really enjoy. Now, you'll notice, I see mostly people who already have some understanding of the principles, but I know there will be people listening to this who signed up and they can come in the middle of the day. They'll be hearing the recording. So for new people, I wonder what the new people would hear as the commonality between those three statements. There's this operative word, and most people are going to hear the word fear. Well, that's repeated, all of those possibilities. But really, the operative word that that I'm thinking is thought, because fear is nothing more than thought. And there's this acronym you've probably heard before, that fear, F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. I love that because it's so true. We just get so caught up in what appears to be a reality that we are creating ourselves. And the great thing is that it's all connected to a feeling, because we feel what we think. So what a fail-safe way to know when our thinking is off course. To know that when you feel bad, that's an indication that your thinking is probably somewhere in the tanker and not something to take seriously. Give yourself a mental break and then come back to whatever it is, and you'll have a fresh perspective about that. I know that I have a different life because of what I've come to understand about how mind, thought, and consciousness works to give us an experience of life every moment. I know that I have been able to let go of a lot of negativity because of that. Do you know, I spent a long time feeling shame that I was single. Here I am at this stage of my life. I had one marriage, and we both agreed that's really, in my mind, the only way that makes sense for people to get divorced is if they both agree that they're not the best people for each other for whatever reason, like Mark was talking about. And if you can part feeling good about that, feeling like you're freeing each other up to find somebody who's more appropriate for you, then that's really getting a divorce with love. I have people in my life who are great friends with their exes, and their exes remarried, they remarried, and they go out for dinners together, the two couples. Why not? Why not? But there's been so much societal thinking about what it means to be single in a world of couples, that somehow there's something bad about that or wrong about that. And that's conditioned thinking, that there's no truth to that. There are a lot of people in the world who choose to be single. They like their solitude, they like coming and going, their independence. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if you're single and holding yourself back from meeting other people because you've got one of these fearful thoughts going on, fear that you're not good enough, or fear that whatever it is that keeps you from just being open to meeting people, then that's when it's not a good idea. That's when it's time to really search within yourself and see how your thinking could be holding you back. I have found it just fun. It's just enjoyable to meet other people. And I've found that it's really important to do that without having expectations that whoever I'm going to meet is going to be the one for the rest of my life. Boy, that's pressure, isn't it? To have that on your mind. And a lot of people do. They get themselves all worked up. And I hear about these long distance relationships, and, you know, one gets off the plane and the other one's meeting them and they say, holy cow, that's not even the person I've been talking to. You know, it looks like a whole different person. All kinds of really funny stories about that, because you got to realize we're all doing the best we can, given how things are looking to us in that particular moment. So if somebody, you know, if you're on a dating site and you meet somebody who's years older than the picture they've put up, well, you know, pre-principles, before I really had a better handle on mind, thought, and consciousness and how they interact to give us a reality. Before that, pre-principles, I'll call it, I would get really angry and aggravated. How dare you? You know, I would get into that. And I have a funny story about it, but, you know, I'll tell you all privately. It's not one of those things you want to talk about in public, but it's really a great story. And the point that I'm trying to make is that post principles, I really have so much more compassion for people. So they put a picture up that's, you know, 10 years, 20 years younger than who they are. Maybe they look in the mirror and that's what they see. You know, that's good for them. You know, I would like to look in the mirror and see myself 20 years younger. It's not a bad deal. So, you know, another thing is having a sense of humor about stuff and seeing that we are all really the same. The only thing, and I'm seeing this more and more, let me tell you, the only thing that separates us is our physical form and our different thinking. It's the only thing that separates us, because we're all coming from the same energy, whatever that is. It's the same life force, the same really love energy. You know, why is it that people want a couple? Why do we have that desire to be with another? Because it's great to share and to experience love at that level.
We are connected to one another, that we all the same energy, and that we could have this feeling of connectedness to anybody we meet. And like, you know, you've shared a lot around this, and I think it's really a nice place to start with for this first webinar, that the only thing that gets really in the way of that connectedness is our own thinking. Either we have expectations on ourselves or we put that on the other person. But given that they are love, the energy that we would call love, that they are pure love, as we are, you could try to find that. Yes. It doesn't mean that you may enjoy going further with this person, but really in terms of whatever you're looking at in terms of dating for yourself, you could look to find that in that person, looking beyond maybe what they're sharing, because my guess is some of the tone of what they're sharing is coming from their own insecure thought.
Right.
I think that's the compassion you talk about, Lori, that I love, is that you can meet somebody for the first time and really have understanding that they too might be vulnerable to be getting caught up in insecure thought. And so they may not come across as, I don't know, as soft as you'd like or as warm as you'd like, but you could still try to listen and discover the deeper feelings of love within them that might show up as generosity or gratitude or something like that. So I love that. And I remember I was talking to this group, and it was a group of mental health professionals, you know, and I was talking about how love is really within us. And if we meet someone and live in that feeling, we will fall in love with them. So this psychiatrist raised her hand and she said, you know, I'm going on a date tonight, Mark. Does that mean if I'm in that love with this person, I could go ahead and marry this person who I'm just meeting tonight? And I said, well, look, if I don't lose my credibility with you, yeah, like what's the difference except that you start getting into fault finding, or you get into your expectations. So we had a laugh about this truth that, um, as Lori, you've shared so much, in a beautiful way, that the more we can see that. We're vulnerable on a first date, for example, or just meeting somebody on one of these sites to get caught up in insecure thinking, and kind of keep that quiet and look for this essence in the other person. Just look for it. Sydney Banks talked about, everybody has wisdom. It's another way he talked about it. And if you could meet someone and look for that within them, you'll feel a deep connection. And that's what everybody's looking for, is that understanding, or that deep connection. And then you'll know whether to go forward or not.
So many people listen through their own thinking, through their own ideas of what's being said. I spent a lot of time with clients. I don't know if you all know that I have a practice with as a marriage and family therapist, and I'm licensed in the state of Connecticut. And it's been so interesting since around 1985 that I've seen so many couples in various stages, either dating or premarital. They come in for premarital counseling, or just to kickstart their relationship again. They've been together for a long time and things have gotten pretty mundane, or helping them separate in as kind of way as possible. And so the main thing, like, they will come in and they will say, I would venture to guess it's like 95%, maybe more, where they all say, we have a problem communicating. And you know what I say? It's not a problem communicating, it's a problem listening.
Mm.
That's what we find. And they're amazed to find out that there's a story about this in the book that Chris Heath and I are writing. The Secret of Love is the first part of the title. And it's all about couples and what they have gone through. And this one couple, he's listening to her, and all of a sudden he says, holy cow, this is the same story you have been telling me for like the last year about what's going on in your office. And this is the first time I've actually heard that it's not about you standing up for yourself. It's about the whole other thing. And he was just talking to her, and saying, I've heard this story so many times, stop it. And she'd keep telling him the story because she never felt satisfied, that her story was being heard. And lo and behold, he really hears what she is trying to get across to him. And then she felt his compassion because he really got it.
Yeah.
You don't feel compassion from somebody else, even if they're giving you compassion. If they're giving you compassion over a whole different thing, a whole different concept of what you're trying to get across.